In all of this journey, what was that one phase where you doubted yourself the most?
I mean, people have a tendency of, having certain biases when it comes to hiring women. Our fears, our joys are broadly universal. So to me, that was a very serious eye opener.
Hi, I'm Sahil, and welcome to the Vault Spaces, an original podcast by the Vault Circle. This is the podcast where we bring ahead truth behind titles. Here, top leaders take off their corporate masks and share the real human stories behind tough decisions. It's all about trust, honesty, and the leadership lessons you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started. So, today's guest is someone who operates in rooms where precision, pressure, and responsibility define the atmosphere. Yet behind the sharp professional presence is a story shaped by childhood dreams, quiet resilience, and deeply human values. Welcome, Khyati ma'am. Let's start with a quick introduction about you to anyone who's watching this. But welcome to World Spaces, Khyati ma'am. It's amazing having you today here.
Thank you. Thank you, Sahil. I'm very happy to be here and it's genuinely a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And the thing is, Sahil, conversations help both ways, right? They help to share the story, but it also refines and clarifies our own thoughts to ourselves. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I'll give a little brief about myself. I'm Khyati Parekh. I am the General Counsel at EAAA Alternatives. I've been a part of the founding team of this business. So, since about 2009-10 is when we started off. And today we are one of the largest alternative asset managers in the country. So it has been a very interesting, exciting journey for me from where we started to where we are today. And also personally, when we started off, I was in a very different life phase. And, over the years, there have been, I got married, then I had kids, and today my children are 7 and 11. So, yeah, my personal life and my professional life have moved together, and that's something I would also like to share.
So before we go and talk about your kids in this podcast, I want to know how were you as a kid? Like before law came into picture, before you were a professional, how were you as a child, as a kid?
So, it's a very interesting question you ask, Sahil, because, it's currently a life arc situation. As a child, I used to write. I loved writing. I used to journal and I used to write poetry and, school magazine. And I was this straight A student, all of that stuff. And I have come back to writing very recently, just about a year ago, is when I started writing again extensively. And that has brought, almost new vigor and joy to my life uh, to go back to writing. And I was an ambitious child. You're doing well in school academically, then you enter college, and typical college dreams, like in I did my BBA, Bachelor's in Business Administration, and a friend of mine and I opened an account with Kotak, saying, "Arey, trading karenge, and we'll learn about the markets, and simultaneously we are making plans. Can we get into some business which will have massive scale? Ambani ko competition de sakte hain kya?" And Ambani was not so big back then. They were big, but not
Okay.
so. That's who I was as a child and as a teenager.
So what were you writing back then? Like what all things apart from poetries, what else were you writing?
I was even back then writing, reflecting on the world as it is, reflecting on my own thoughts, feelings. So, what today is called memoir writing, journal writing back then has now got journal writing plus plus reflective writing in the nature of memoir.
So, do you have your journals from your childhood?
No, no, I destroyed them in heaps at some point.
So, do you still journal? Or you started journaling back? You said you come back
Yes,
to writing.
yes, yes. I have started journaling, and there is something called daily pages. I don't know if you've heard of it,
Yes, yes,
but
yes.
yeah, yeah. So that's what I practice now.
What do you usually write about?
Everything that is happening to me, around me, my experiences, just everything.
Fair. So, I mean, so this is like a typical journal that you've been maintaining since past 1 year, where every day, whatever happens, you write about it.
Not like a catalog of, okay, A, B, C, D happened today. More about whatever I feel strongly about, or whatever is playing on my mind. So daily pages in that sense, since you are already aware, helps to clarify and, create space in the head so that whatever is bothering, whatever background noise is there, you can, put it on paper and then have space for other things. And many times, what emerges is also clarity, action plans. So, stuff that you've been ruminating about. Once it gets down on page, firstly, big problems become much smaller in scale. And then there is space for an action plan to emerge, which emerges very often from inside you, right? Because we know ourselves best, we know our own situations best. So it helps as a sort of way of coaching oneself in that sense.
So, how has this shaped you as a person, or what are the three core qualities or three changes that have come in you after doing this daily writing?
I think the biggest change, Sahil, and what over the years at least I've been thinking about it, is it brings a sense of agency, a sense of, getting a hold, a hang of what you are feeling, what you want to do about it, a sense, instead of just feeling like a passenger on the train of your life, you feel it helps you get in the driver's seat. I think that has been the biggest change and value of daily pages and my writing to me.
Got it. And would you also want your kids to do this when they grow up or even now?
Yeah, I have been, nudging them. My younger one used to journal with me for a few months in between. Currently, they're not very interested in it. But I think these are the kind of things, when children see parents doing, whether it's fitness, whether it's journaling, self care, music, hobbies, work ethic, all the things. I mean, if you want your children to be doing something, it's quite useless to tell them. You have to show them. So that's what I'm, banking on.
So, what now that we are talking about music, taste in music and hobbies, what are your hobbies now currently in your life?
Music is a strong hobby. I used to learn the sitar for a few years,
Do
and
you still play?
I have stopped. Last couple of years, I realized that I'm more of a Kansen than a Tansen. So, but I love Hindustani classical music. So that's a genre I really enjoy.
Who's
And
your
then
favorite artist?
Kumar Gandharvaji, he's my favorite artist.
And how
Among the
often?
yeah,
So, music is one hobby. What else?
music, I love to walk. I love to walk. I think I'd read somewhere it said exercise is the most underutilized antidepressant. So the high I get, the stress relief or the sense of calm I get from walking, I really enjoy it. Almost every evening I do take a walk. So that's another. I like to basically my daughters are now in the age when they cycle regularly, and I was inspired to get back to it. So I cycle with them sometimes. So that's something I enjoy.
So, at what point in your life did law enter? Like, was it a career choice way in the beginning, or did it occur to you gradually and then you picked up law as a career?
So, Sahil, I did my BBA in marketing and finance was a minor in my BBA. I then went on to do my MBA in marketing and I then joined investment banking. I basically, after my MBA, I heard about investment banking and I said, wow, this sounds really exciting. I have to find a way to get in. And then I said, my MBA is marketing. So how does this work now? But I worked with friends who had majored in finance and learned about it and managed to crack the interview and got in. That's how I got into investment banking. And then we had the financial crisis, 2007, 2008. I joined in 2007. 2008 was the crisis, and investment banking basically had less and less to do. I used to then manage relationships with financial sponsors for our firm. And then when we were starting off the alternatives business, I got the opportunity to become part of the founding team. So that time it was a startup, right? Within the larger Edelweiss company, EAAA, Edelweiss Alternatives was the startup within an established firm. So we had the privilege of, in that sense, the backing of and safety of a supportive parent while also being able to enjoy the thrill of having a startup of our own. And that time I did everything from marketing to legal to sales to what have you, everything, presentations, sales support, structuring, everything. So that went on for a few years, and then in 2015, when I came back from my maternity leave, 2014, I went on mat leave, and 15, when I came back, I figured that I could not be coming into office and, doing the long hours that I had been doing till then. Because there were days I would go home at like 11, 12, 1, stuff like that. So I said, now I can't do this. And I needed to be home with my child. So we worked out a system and a profile which was most accessible and doable from a remote setting also. So I could be in office for a few hours and rest of the time I could work from home, which was legal because most of our investors were international investors and the law firms, their law firms with whom we negotiated, our law firms. So all of it was, online and on Teams and or, Zoom calls or what have you, or on the phone. So that is how it worked out. And then I decided, and my organization supported me, saying, okay, then let's do it this way. Let's carve out this profile and you take care of it. And it works well, personally also for me and professionally, for the organization as well. It was a win-win. So that's how it came about. And I became the legal point person for my organization.
So when you first entered the professional world, and so what was back then, what was the reality of like being a woman in a leadership space or being a woman who is driving an entire company from the forefront? Like what was the reality back then? Because now, of course, female, a lot of women leaders have come across. But what was the reality back then when you entered or you started your career?
So when I started my career, financial services was still very male dominated. I think the ratios are improving every year, but I think it's still not like some of the other professions and businesses have much more balanced ratios as compared to financial services, particularly alternatives or investment banking to some extent, but alternatives for sure, because that's one I see more closely. We have at EAAA one of the better, gender balance ratios. But in general, the industry, is quite, um, you know, male dominated relatively. And that was the case even back then. And I think there are a whole bunch of, how should I put it? Whole bunch of, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, people have a tendency of, having certain biases when it comes to hiring women, retaining women, promoting them to senior leadership roles. And there's extensive work done in this area. Even within private equity and alternatives, there's an organization called WinPE, Women in Private Equity, which is run by a dear friend and industry colleague, Nupur Garg. And they have also done extensive work in identifying those biases. For example, even at the resume stage, right? If you mask the names, the outcomes can be much more favorable for women or more balanced versus knowing that it's a woman that you are whose profile you're looking at, because there are certain, I guess, inherent biases which come from years and years of how you've seen the world, how you've seen the industry and things like that. So there are those biases that are at play for all of us, not just the men, maybe the women as well. So we all have to work on those and see how best we can, in that sense, make it an ungendered approach, is how I see it.
So, I mean, especially because I do so many finance conferences, that's our strongest vertical at One Circle. If I have 40 speakers, as so let's say a CFO conference, if I have 40 speakers, barely four or five would be speakers, CFOs who are women leaders, right?
Right.
And I keep on telling this in all my conferences that this is something that I want to change. And of course, as you rightly mentioned, that in alternatives and PEVC businesses, so I also we also run a family office conference. There, if I have 40 speakers, there's only two women leaders who are heading a family office or are a CIO at a family office. I mean, the ratio is in finance. I still think that there's a lot of work that needs to happen because we don't get enough leaders to come and speak at the conferences. Also, because there's a shortage of women leaders who are there. I think that's
Mm,
an effort that I would also like to put in from our end because we are also into a community business, right?
mm.
Doing conferences for us is a more of a community business. So I've been talking to a couple of people. So for example, I've spoken to Nidhi Sharma. She heads the family office of Mittal Tractors.
Okay.
That, okay, this is an idea that I have in mind where I want to start something called as the Saraswati Project by World Circle, where in each conferences that we do, we'll give 1 2 hours solely for women leaders, and all the manager level people who are women, we'll give them direct access to speakers who have made it and are leading and are women. So that's a vertical that
Interesting.
we are trying to develop, and I hope that I get to do that as soon as possible.
Very
So now,
interesting.
now that we're talking about all of this, did you ever feel that you had to be stronger, maybe quieter, maybe more louder or different just to be taken seriously because you are a women leader? Did you ever feel that you had to do all of this?
Sahil, I think one thing was very clear. I thought and I did believe that I had to be, and it had nothing, no reflection on the people around me, but just the general nature of the industry, right? Where I thought that I had to be probably at least 1.5 times better than people around me because I wanted to make sure that I am taken seriously. I wanted I did not want to be written off with people saying, oh, now that she has had children, work is not her priority, or now she's married, maybe she's less serious, stuff like that. So, yes, there was always the need internally to prove that, I am on the ball, I'm on top of my game. And that I think is true for a whole host of working women leaders that at least I have interacted with. It is a sentiment that I have seen them share a fair bit. So yes, I had that. And then because I had, taken this flexible work arrangement, there was again for me a very high need to make sure that I conveyed to the organization that my actions conveyed it loud and clear, that I was on top of the game and on top of my, and it was not like if I had time flexibility or basically location flexibility more than anything else, that I was slacking on my work or not taking it lightly. So if I was in office, maybe I could take a day to come back on something. But if I was working from home, I would make sure it's delivered by that evening. So, because naturally, even from the organization's point of view, I can imagine them wanting to be sure that this resource who is being given this flexibility is actually delivering. So there was that extra effort to make sure that I delivered a little more than even what was expected, to honor that faith that was put in me, that trust that was put in me.
Amazing. I mean, I think these kind of things work out pretty well for both the parties who are involved. So having said that, can you recall of any one moment where being a woman was either your biggest challenge or your greatest strength?
That's an interesting question, and I'm trying to go through the Rolodex of memories. I think from a personal standpoint, not on the professional side, but from a personal standpoint, I think the biggest privilege it gives me is being able to have managed my career in such a manner that I get to spend more time with my children. I get to be, home a little early so that I'm there for them at least in the evening hours. Which, for example, my husband comes in at least an hour or two after me, and he has lost, I feel, those two critical hours which I am able to spend with them. And that I don't know if it is truly gender based, but at least the way my career has been crafted and the way things have come about, I think that is something I deeply, deeply value.
I think we've touched upon enough on women leaders. Now let's talk about you as a leader. So you said that when you entered, you had a lot of mentors, a lot of leaders, maybe your bosses who made sure that you got that opportunity. They worked around that flexibility for you. So what conscious efforts do you take to make sure that your team or people who look up to you or report to you feel safe to or speak honestly with you about, like, what are the conscious efforts to make that you put to make sure that your team is, always honest and they feel safe to speak to you about anything?
So, one thing I feel the effort that I make is to remain approachable and to also make the effort to reach out. So, I will generally try and, stop by, chat for a bit, or, and whenever somebody does drop into my room, I will make sure I, make the time to chat and uh, just general chat, right? It's not always something serious or something that's a problem. But I feel that when you create and maintain that rapport is when, if there is an issue, if there is a problem, people will then feel free to or feel confident to then come and share with you when there is a real issue. So I think relationships and building that comfort is an essential part of, leadership in that sense mode.
Amazing. So if your team had to describe you in 3 words, how would they do it?
Maybe we did have an exercise in our office a couple of years back as a leadership team. We had, I don't know if you heard of that exercise where people they put a blank sheet on your back and everyone comes and writes your attributes or what they think about you. And I think broadly it was something about being a positive person, fun to be with, and something about being hardworking. I don't know if this sounds very self congratulatory.
No, it doesn't. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, of course, your team members, I know that your team members would be talking highly of you. So I don't think that is very self-congratulating. Okay, moving ahead. So we've spoken a bit about you as a person, childhood, your career starting point, and the place where you are at right now. In all of this journey, what was that one phase where you doubted yourself the most? Not just privately, but also publicly, you thought that, okay, now people have started questioning me and something has happened wrong. What is that one big failure moment still date in your life that you still think about, even in your day-to-day life today?
I I don't think there's a failure moment that I think about even today. There was our organization had come up with these this organization wide awards sometime around 2012-13, and I thought I was a great performer, so I will certainly get one, and I didn't, and that to me was a in hindsight, it feels like a very small thing, but that was big for me back then. And when I, tried to get some more information about it, I was told that, look, you have not built the bridges other than with your direct boss and your super boss, maybe just your direct line of command. You have not built bridges across the organization. And that is the reason why, in spite of your good work, you have not been recognized. So to me, that was a very serious eye opener in terms of the need to build those bridges. And which is why it's very heartening for me at some level that today the cross functional teams that work with me, my role is, my leadership is purely based on influence. So, from a person who was struggling to build bridges within the organization to today being able to lead purely by, in that sense, influence, right? They're not directly reporting to me, the internal teams. The external law firms, okay, they work. Directly with me, but then they are external vendors. So to be able to develop that within myself, I think I'm quite proud of that.
Do you think that was necessary also for that incident to happen to you so that the person that you have turned out to be now that you look forward, you thank that incident?
Yeah, if you had asked me even 5 years ago, I may not easily have said yes, but maybe in hindsight now. I wish I could have learnt it more easily, but yes, I think so.
Got it. So far, how much ever we have spoken, I understand that you put a lot of efforts to make sure that you give enough time to your kids, to your family. But has there ever been a phase or a time where you thought that you are not able to give time to your kids or your family, and then how do you overcome that? Because I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because majority of our audience is Gen Zs. They can't deal with workload pressure. They are constantly chasing work-life balance. I would also want to know your opinion on work-life balance and what do you think? Because yesterday I was talking to someone and they said that 2 days off are not required, 1 day is fine. And then there are people in my company who say that we should only be working 4 days and 3 days should be off. So I know I've asked you too many questions at a single go, but yeah, all of these are related to each other somehow.
Yeah, yeah. So, yes, there have certainly been phases, and there continue to be phases where there is no semblance of work life balance. Like when I'm in the middle of a deal closing, there is absolutely zero life. There is only work. So, we did, for example, the Nuvama business when we sold it to PAG. That was, around 2021. COVID chal raha tha, and we did it online, all the negotiations, all the documentation, everything. And I was literally sleeping about 3 to 4 hours every night. And every morning you're reviewing the docs. By afternoon, you're getting into calls. By evening, you're churning out another set of docs. And in the night, again, you are everyone, right? The counterparty, us, the law firms, getting onto calls at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and then negotiating till 1, 2, and then restart. So there was 15, 20 days at that time when basically there was no life at all. And that's one extreme example. And in varying degrees, every time there's a deal closing, there is so much pressure that, there is no balance. But the way I see it, it depends on every profile, nature of job. There may be other jobs which are much more balanced on a day to day. There may be jobs that are skewed like this. And I think it is for each of us to find our own sense of what that balance means. I am personally not in favor of, working hours and work that is sustained on a zero life and 100 work kind of a formula on a long term basis. But are all of us going to have phases of it? Absolutely. Like when we were also a startup, right? I used to, at that time, there were months. This was days, but that time it was months of, long hours, putting in the work and stuff like that. So I think it is for each of us to make that call depending on where we are, in our personal lives and our professional lives, and find that balance and find a way to make it work.
Do you have any fear at this point in your life? which normally wouldn't get associated with someone who has the same sort of designation that you guys. So, for example, if there's a fear which general counsels usually they don't, no one would expect them to have. Do you have any such fear in your life where people might not expect you to have it, but you do have it?
I think, the funny thing, Sahil, is our fears, our joys are broadly universal. We think that we are unique in these fears or even our feelings. Like the most common feeling or the one of the most common negative feelings that people have is the feeling that, they have been left out. So imagine the whole world, the one of the most common negative feelings is the feeling that people are feeling lonely or feeling left out. So similarly, I think in terms of, fears as a person or as a general counsel, one of the most greatest confusions I have is also the role of AI and the role of humans in terms of legal work or even in terms of how businesses are run generally. That is an area that I find quite flummoxing. What are businesses going to look like 10 years hence, 20 years hence? Maybe 10 years feels like, okay, they're in shooting distance, but say 20 years hence. So, and I think I don't believe that is very unique. I believe that must be fairly common. But it was true for me also.
So now that you look forward to the future, professionally, personally, what is it that excites you the most at this point in life?
I think life has a way of surprising you, right? I'm also looking forward to some surprises. I'm looking forward to seeing my children grow up and watch them grow, blossom, to be part of that journey, to growing old with my husband, to seeing where my work and our business takes me. So I think all the areas of life to see what happens over the next 10, 20 years is fairly exciting.
So before we wrap, some final questions that I genuinely can't miss on asking you. So first one is like when the day ends and all the roles, all the designations they drop, right? Then who is Khyati Parekh in her quietest moments when the world goes shut?
I'd say identifying a lot more with my identity, with my role or my self as a writer. That is something that is growing much stronger in how I see the world, how I'm able to make sense of the world. And I am really quite at peace either when I'm reading or I'm writing. That is when I feel like, okay, yes, this is me.
Got it. Are you happy and satisfied the way you've led your entire life?
Yes, I am.
You can be absolutely honest about it. I mean, it's
Yes.
okay even if you want to say something else.
I am. I don't think I could have. See, where does satisfaction come from? I think it comes from where you can be satisfied that in the circumstances you had, in the situations that you were in, did you broadly do your best in terms of the resources you had, right? Mental, emotional, physical, whatever. I think in all of those, I feel that I've broadly done what best I could. So, which is why I feel
Amazing. And that is a source of inspiration for me now that you've said this. So the final question of this podcast for you is what kind of legacy do you want to leave with? Like what kind of legacy do you want to leave with? What kind of impact do you want to live with in the lives of people whom you work with or for people who are there in your life at present?
um I think I want to leave behind a legacy of kindness. I think all that we receive is something that we learn to give forward. And I have received a lot of it, and I hope that I am passing forward that and more so that when we are gone, what we leave behind is that flower of kindness, is that energy of kindness behind.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out the time.
Thank you.
Any final advices for the Gen Zs, people my age who are watching this?
I think one thing I would share is, this whole thing of find your passion. It's great if you do, but it's quite possible that you don't for very long. And while you wait to find it for it to find you, what you can do is show up with the energy you have, with the enthusiasm you have, with the intelligence, with the hard work, and do your best at, what you got at hand. And slowly but surely, your passion or some form of it will find you, or you will find it. So this whole thing of, absolutely, oh, you must find your passion. There are people who are artists or, professionals also who know from a very young age, maybe, I wanted to be a doctor, oh, I wanted to be a painter, and what have you. Excellent, great for them. But there's a lot of us who are not quite sure. And I think that is fine. If we keep sitting and thinking about passion for, 5 years, then I don't think we stand a better chance. We need to go out there and start meeting different passions to find which one is ours. So, that's something I would.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think if more than anyone else, this advice is going to help me out because I am also figuring out my passion, one work at a time, one passion at a time. So thank you so much for saying this. I think this is the exact feedback that I wanted to hear today, because we have a conference on Friday and
Okay.
we are really stressed how it will go because the numbers, we have not achieved the numbers that we wanted to. And I've been
Okay.
really fed up and I've been like, okay, yaar, is this what I want to do? Is this the stress that I want to live my life with? And I think the timing of this entire interview is so nice because this was supposed to happen yesterday. But God was like, hey, nahi, you wanted to get this feedback and advice today, and let me schedule the interview today itself. So I think so amazing. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was nice hosting you, and I hope you enjoyed this session.